Alright guys, so in this video I am going to fill up the cooling system. So first one I'm going to do is the engine cooling system. I decided to try out the Supertech Dex Cool. I think it was like 11 something dollars at Walmart compared to some of the other ones that are out there, especially the dealership and some of the other brands seem to be an economical price. As long as this thing fits the GM standards for Dex Cool, I'm pretty sure it's going to be good. So this is already a pre-diluted 50-50 mix. So for the 5.3 liter for this year, it's going to take 4 quarts of the Dex Cool. So I got that ready to go. And then the way we're going to fill this system is with the airlift system, system I have here. This thing works really nice. Pretty simple to use. It's pretty closely resembles what you'd find at the dealership when they refill your system. The big advantage to this, even though so this is the airlift one from UView. It's kind of pricey, but in my opinion, it's definitely worth every penny. Mainly because it's just made out of good materials, and it's not. I know it's going to work. But the big advantage for these systems, whether you have the one from UView or whether you have some knockoff brand, the advantage to using systems like this is getting evacuating all the air out of the system. To reduce cavitation problems and reduce poor cooling performance. So we're going to be using the airlift system, getting ready to fill that, the engine cooling system up. One note I want to make about this airlift is your source for shop air. So I have 2 air compressors. The one air compressor I got, I've had that thing for decades. It's pretty old, still works really good. But when I purchased it back in the day, that was back probably when I was in high school. Really didn't know very much about CFM and SCFM and what tools it really powered, and just really didn't pay much attention. Well, that really bit me in the butt this time around when I was getting ready to use the airlift. So I would recommend at least having, if you're going to use either the airlift system itself or use one of the knockoff brands, at least have an air source that's going to provide you 4 SCFM or 4 CFM at 90 psi. Anything lower than that, and you're just not going to be able to pull a vacuum down on the system. And that was kind of the symptoms I was seeing in my other air compressor. So just keep that in mind. It works great once you have those minimum requirements. So let me get it set up and then we'll jump into it. Okay guys, so I got the compressor charged up. So at minimum to use this you need 90 psi, so I have mine set up for 100. In your kit you're going to get your Venturi system with the gauge, various couplings and adapters, your fill tube and a suction tube. And so what I'm going to do is just use this cone shape. Make sure this is loosened, and let's see, let's go ahead and pull out both of these because that's what I need. Let's get this box out of the way. Alright, so first thing to do is we want to remove our cap. Go ahead and insert in this case, my cone onto my gauge here. Alright. So as you can see here, they make it nice. They have you can quantitatively know if you're in a vacuum, and also qualitative. Quantitative being the values that are on the gauge when you're between 26 and 30. inches of vacuum, that's when you know that you're good. Or you can just look at the green. It's better to use the quantitative method, but they also give it for colors too. Alright, so now I got that in there. Now normally sometimes, you notice I got 2 vent lines here. Sometimes if you're not able to pull it on a vacuum, you're going to have to pinch these off. For me, that wasn't the case. If you have a compressor that supplies at least 4 CFM or CFM, you should be good. So we're going to insert this guy. Don't want to try to use this to stabilize the system. When you're trying to tighten it, you could damage. It's a pretty sensitive gauge. So we're just going to hold on to the main body here and begin to tighten this down. And it doesn't have to be, too tight. You're really just trying to get enough of a seal to create a good seal here. Okay. So we got 2 hoses here. Get them untangled from each other. So we're going to use this one later. This is our fill hose. We're going to get ready to put coolant in the system. But the first step to do is to get this pulled down to a vacuum. So I'm going to go ahead and open up the valve. Go ahead, so this is our Venturi assembly. Go ahead and connect this guy. Let's wrap it around like that. And then here's my shop air port. So I got, like I said, 100 psi ready to go. So basically it's going to create a Venturi effect. 100 psi of pressure is going to be discharging on this tube. You might want to have this in a bucket or just somewhere, because if you have coolant left over in the system, it might discharge through the tube and make a mess. While you have a high velocity of air pressure coming out here, is going to create a vacuum on this. Actually, I just closed this port. I want that to be open. And as that's going on, just monitor your gauge. Once you should see it pretty quickly start to move the needle as it's pulling down a vacuum. And then it's pretty much going to max out around 20, somewhere between 25, 26, 30 on your gauge. So let's go ahead and get that set up. Alright guys, so you can see there I'm about a little over 25, I believe that's in inches of mercury, holding pretty steady. And so that's what I want to make note is where, so you basically want to hold the system down or run the system until that needle eventually just pauses. That's about the furthest it can go, and then go ahead and shut off your shut off your ball valve here, and then disconnect your air hose. And so now everything is under a vacuum. You can disconnect this from the gauge, and that will not move. Now you don't want to bump this or do anything radical, because obviously you're going to introduce pressure into the system, or you could undoubtedly do that. So for me, I have used this cone before, but sometimes they hit and miss. So actually for me, what works best is just not using any adapter at all. It just goes straight into the reservoir and tighten it down, and it gets really nice and snug. And then you don't have to, clamp anything down. So what you can see also too here, hopefully it shows up, but you're gonna probably undoubtedly have situations like this where it's gonna collapse your coolant hoses, and that's good. That's actually a good sign. It's not gonna damage them. It's just letting you know that it's pulled the system down. And I've already done this once before because I was trying to evacuate some of the coolant out of here, but it doesn't work too great on that. You can see it really well here on the heater hoses how flat that is. But so I don't expect it to be leaking. The only thing I wanted to watch out for was when I relocated the engine coolant temperature sensor. So I had to remove the driver's side rear block plug. I mean, obviously I did my best on making sure that I torqued it down to spec and used the high performance thread sealant with PTFE, otherwise known as Teflon. So I wasn't anticipating any issues, but this is a good sanity check just to make sure that your system's in check. So as I've been talking here, it's been probably, I don't know, close to a minute, and I'm still holding pretty steady here. It hasn't moved. So now I'm ready to fill. So I removed my Venturi system. At this point on, I'm going to be using this line here, the fill line. And here's where you just want to be careful as you can control either this ball valve or this ball valve when you're getting low on coolant from your source. Switch it off, switch out your to another to add more coolant, or switch out to another coolant container, and then turn it back on, because you don't want to introduce any pressure into the system. So let me get the coolant container ready to go, and then I'll set up my input hose and we'll start filling my cooling system. Turn off this ball valve. Okay, so I got both ball valves off. I don't know if you guys saw, but there was a little bit of coolant that was still in the reservoir there that was just kind of being pushed out. That's why it's always a good idea to have this thing in a bucket, or have a bucket nearby so that can get properly disposed of. So I'm expecting this thing to consume 4 gallons of coolant. So I'm going to have to keep an eye on this, because I don't want this to run out and then start to bring in air into my system, and it defeats the whole purpose of doing this. Make sure this is the orange stuff. It is. Alright. And then how you know that this is going to be full is this gauge is going to go back to 0. So first thing I'm going to do is open up the first ball valve, and then open up our second one. As you can see, it happens fast. I temporarily turned it off because I want to get in a position where I can keep an eye on the level. Alright. You can see down there in my reservoir it's bubbling. This on the edge. Make sure I got it there in the very bottom. I don't want to suck any air in. Alright, that's risky enough there. So I'm going to keep hosing there. Get my other coolant. Again, the most important thing is making sure this hose is at the very bottom of the container. And that you keep an eye on it, because you do not want it to go dry on you. Okay. So we're now at 0. This is almost 3 gallons. Just gonna drain out that hose. Alright, so we're at 0. And can't really see the level from here. Yeah, that guy is over pretty much full to as much as you can get. So that's about as much as I can get it in for now until we actually start up the engine, let it flow through the block and water pump and all that stuff, and then we'll have to top it off. But at least now, you know, I'm probably about 85–90% at capacity, so there'll be enough fluid in there displacing any unused space, so that way I don't have to worry about, as it circulates the system, I don't have to worry about air getting trapped in there and causing issues in the engine block and everywhere else. And then I can top it off when I'm done. So good, it looks like my engine coolant temperature sensor relocation kit is holding. Got this guy filled up as much as I can, so I'm going to go ahead and finish this off by releasing this gauge out of the reservoir, put the cap back on, and then we'll probably go ahead and fill up the supercharger cooling system. Alright guys, same as before, I'm going to do the supercharger side now. First thing I need to do is I need to cap off this vent line. So I just got this from my local auto parts store. It's assorted cap off plugs. So I'm not going to be using the vent line. This one has T-neck, so I'm going to go ahead and cap that guy off. Okay. Go ahead and remove this cap. This one, I don't know what to expect. Hoping I got everything tight, there's no issues, but you never know. So I think I'm going to have to use the cone for that guy. Okay, it's open. Go ahead and get the inventory and walk up the shop air and see what happens. Alright, she's holding the vacuum. The difficult part about this is this cone. It's not on there very well, so if I bump it in the slightest way, it's gonna undo everything I'm doing right now. This makes me happy. It doesn't look like I have any leaks. It's pretty amazing after all this custom tubing. Well, I guess it's not amazing. I mean, those clamps are pretty good. I think I was more worried about these quick connects. Okay, well I think that's good enough. Hasn't moved in the last 40 seconds. Now the difficult part of trying to attach this hose without it leaking. Alright, so that was also about 2 gallons. It's at 0 now. We got my engine cooling filled up. Supercharger cooling system's filled up. This is pretty cool. So, we're about in business. First thing I do is put on my cap. So I think we're good. I don't have any leaks so far. Kind of the only thing left is to, once we get ready to start the engine, let the system circulate and then top off the fluids. But I think that's it. It's pretty exciting. It feels more real now that we got the coolant in there. I really like this neck, this new T-filler neck. That would have been just a pain to use the other one with. The system works really well with that. This is what it looks like. So we got everything filled up and ready to move on. So thanks guys, catch you on the next video.